All right, I'm going to call the Hermiston City Council and Urban Renewal Agency for February 28th, 2022 to order. With the declaration of a quorum, Councilor Primer is absent. Please join me in the flag salute. Lily's playing games on us again. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, good evening. It's nice to see a good crowd in the audience this evening. If you're just now joining us, the City Council had a work session earlier where we got to tour the City Hall, and we're on schedule and still on budget, so those are all good things as well. So
yes, enjoyed
our tour this evening. Any changes to the agenda tonight, Ms. Smith?
No.
All right. So first up on the agenda this evening is youth advisory introductions. You want to do that?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I'm really happy to have here tonight the first version of our Youth Advisory Council. This is something I've been thinking about and talking about for a long time, and different things seem to kind of get in the way of kind of moving forward, but this year things seem to have really come together as we try to give the youth more of a voice in the things that the city does. So right now we're still kind of in a formulation stage, but the goal is to have someone sit here at the table with you as a youth city council member to offer their perspective on the issues that you discuss and see, and then also have representatives on various city committees, things like that, to offer a youth perspective. So first I'd like to ask Mr. Davis to come up and kind of give his perspective. He's a government teacher at the high school, and then we've asked each of the youth members to introduce themselves.
Push, is there a button on there? Yeah, there you go.
My name is Aaron Davis. I am walked through Hermiston High School. And everything that you guys do, them and vice versa, out and wanted to see from kind of vice versa. And 15 becomes kind of a these kids end up for yet. They're here, and so I'm going to have. So hopefully.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Davis. I think you do have to speak kind of right directly into that microphone. We are digitally recording this, and people can watch the meeting online and on the phone. And so if you don't speak into the microphone, then they can't hear you. So make sure that you're pretty close to it.
Hello, my name is Caesar Morfin, and I am a sophomore at the school.
My name is Fernando Morales, and I'm a sophomore at the Hermiston High School.
Hi, my name is Anna Rivera, and I'm a sophomore.
Hi, my name is Haley Gardner, and I'm a junior.
My name is Caitlin Watkins, and I am a junior at Hermiston High School.
My name is Nick Burswell, and I'm a junior at Hermiston High.
My name is Elizabeth Doherty, and I'm a junior at Hermiston High School.
Hello, my name is Everett Wicks, and I'm a junior at Hermiston High School.
Hello, I'm Stormy Richmond, and I'm a junior at Hermiston High School.
Hello, my name is Manuel Salazar, and I am a sophomore at the high school.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Mr. Davis, the students that were selected for this, how did they get selected? How were they chosen? How did that process work?
So in the fall, Mr. Smith and I kind of formulated, well, actually we looked at some bylaws of other cities, Cottage Grove and another city. I can't remember either. So we just kind of looked at some other cities that are doing this with their high school students. And we kind of looked at which ones we thought could best fit what we're trying to do, trying to accomplish. And so we kind of established that first. And then over right before Christmas break, we talked about some of the qualifications that we're expecting from the students, the time commitment, what they need to do, and kind of had a general questionnaire. And I reached out to the student body, freshmen, sophomores, and juniors at Hermiston High School. We figured the seniors this year, wouldn't be the right fit for this year, and kind of put it out there and wanted to see who would reply, and got all of these students and a couple others who were interested, and we talked back and forth, and for spring commitments or just other things that they have to do. But this is the group that we have for this year, and hopefully, as being underclassmen, they can carry the torch into next school year, and then bring up some upcoming, freshmen or sophomores from next year, and then like I said, we can just get this thing going. We're going to try to establish some positions here shortly, and then hopefully next year we can kind of make this a regular thing, and they can get to know the committees. So that's pretty much what it was. It was just send an email out and then see who was interested.
So this isn't part of a class. They don't get credit for doing this.
This
right?
is all
volunteerism.
It's a club, essentially,
Club.
like you would a key club or anything else like that. And I keep saying this, but we're the first class at Hermiston High School that I can think of that's doing something like this, and we're just excited for what it can be.
Well, we're excited for your leadership and the students that have volunteered their time to participate. So much of what we do in politics is going to affect you, and so we want to hear your voice, and being a part of that, I think, is super important. And so having students like yourself participate in that process will help us to maybe make the right decisions, so that when you get to this age, that you're not having to fix the problems that we created. And so it's nice to have youth involved, and having a participant sitting here with the council would be a nice addition. Mr. Brown isn't that far out of high school, but still having somebody in high school would be nice to have up here too. So it's always great to see young folks interested in politics. Too much of civic government has been lost, unfortunately, and I don't know that we do a good enough job anymore teaching it. So I'm glad you're interested. I'm glad you're willing to participate, and we look forward to working further with you and you helping us to come up with some great decisions. This is your city too, right? So you should have a voice as well. So thank you for your willingness. Do you guys have any questions or comments? Yes, Mr. On.
I'm just so excited. Young people have great ideas. And another thing that a lot of the times as a council, we have a hard time, well, not a hard time, but we want to get information out to our community members. And you guys have that ability to be able to communicate through Snapchat, Instagram, and the other social communications that you guys use, pretty fast. So it's great that we're going to have representation of our youth, so that we can get your ideas, so that you do feel like you are part of this community. We value your opinion, and I am so looking forward to having more involvement from our youth. And I'm so glad, Mr. Davis, that you were able to work with Mr. Smith to make this a reality. And I'm really excited. Thank you.
Welcome.
So I would this on? Okay. So I would invite you during this time that you get to hang out with us and we get to hang out with you, that you absolutely grill us on anything you want to know about being in government. When I was in your age, I participated in the Model UN, and that was right about the same time that I realized one day I wanted to run for office. And I'm not going to tell you how long ago that it was that I was in high school, but it was a long time ago, way before y'all was born. So by all means, feel free to like pick our brains and everything like that. We are here to, I mean, yeah, you are going to be hearing part of the process and we're going to be hearing from you, but by all means, use this as a resource, you know, letters of recommendation later, or that kind of stuff, you know, scholarships, things, whatever you need, okay? This is a great opportunity for that, and when I was your age, that's when I really got involved in the political process myself on a larger scale. So enjoy yourselves, have fun.
Very good. Ms. Myers, make sure you pull your microphone.
This is something that we have worked on for over 20 years. We have thrown it out and thrown it out and thrown it out, and finally it's come back. And I'm very excited to have you all here. And I want you to feel welcome.
Very good. You know, who knows what our Hermiston logo saying is? Okay, better go home and study that one, all right? Where life is sweet, okay? It's on the water tower, all right? You know who thought of the where life is sweet part? It was a high school student. So we had a youth advisory group that participated in our branding effort, and the word sweet came out of that from one of the students, and it stuck. And so there you go. There's some proof that you guys can make a difference, and that's permanent. That's on our water tower. I mean, we've painted it, but, but it's going to be with us a while, so that's pretty cool to have you guys make that big of an impact, you know, somebody in high school make that huge of an impact in our community. So the proof is in the pudding. We're willing to listen, and so we're glad to have you participate and looking forward to this adventure as we go forward. And thank you, Mr. Davis, for your leadership.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. You guys are more than welcome to stick around and see what this process is all about tonight, but feel free to leave if you'd like to. So citizen input on non-agenda items. So this is the first opportunity for citizen input during our meeting. Anyone wishing to bring anything before the council that is not on our current agenda, please come up to the microphone up front, introduce yourself by name and address, direct your comments to me, and try to limit them to less than 5 minutes. If you are a Zoom participant, please raise your hand. And if you are on the phone, please dial 9. Any public comment? Okay, nothing? All right, we're going to move on to the consent agenda items. There's consent agenda items A through F. Do we need to pull any, council? Okay. So there's none to be removed. Any public comments on consent agenda items A through F? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve consent agenda items A through F?
So moved.
Been moved by Councilor Davis, seconded by Councilor Duran, that we accept consent agenda items as presented A through F. Roll call?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously 7-0. On to public hearings. Tonight we have a public hearing on the annexation of the Horizon Project, Inc., 4N 2802BC, TL 1400-80, Northeast Tracy Lane, Ordinance. It's also going to be later under Ordinance number 2337. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest from the council? Seeing none, can we have the hearing guidelines? Is that Mr. Spencer?
Yeah, at this time I'll go ahead and present the hearing guidelines. The applicable substantive criteria relied upon by the city in rendering the decision to annex the property are contained in 15005 of the Hermiston Code of Ordinances. Testimony and evidence must be directed toward the criteria described above or other criteria in the comprehensive plan or land use regulations which the person believes apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue by the close of the record at or following the hearing, in person or by letter, precludes appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Failure to raise an issue with sufficient specificity to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to that issue precludes appeal to the LUBA based on that issue. failure to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Prior to the conclusion of the evidentiary hearing, any participant may request an opportunity to present additional evidence, arguments, or testimony regarding the application. The City Council shall grant such a request by continuing the public hearing pursuant to ORS 197-763-6B, or leaving the record open for additional written evidence, arguments, or testimony pursuant to ORS 197-763-6C. For this hearing, the process begins with the staff report, followed by testimony from the applicants and other supporters of the application. This will be followed by opponents to the application. Finally, a rebuttal by the applicant will be allowed. The public hearing portion of the procedure will then be closed, and the City Council will consider the information and testimony received, adopt findings of fact, and render a decision on annexation.
Okay, we will now open the public hearing, and city staff will now present its report.
Okay, tonight the City Council is holding a hearing on annexation. The Horizon Project has submitted an application for annexation for 1.02 acres of land, which is located at 80 Northeast Tracy Lane. The property lies within the urban portion of our urban growth boundary and is adjacent to city limits on its west, east, and southern boundaries. The applicant wishes to annex the property to connect to city services and to further develop the property residentially. The property has a comprehensive plan map designation of commercial, which corresponds to the city's outlying commercial C2 zoning designation. The surrounding neighborhood around this property is zoned commercial, with commercial development to the west, residential homes to the north and east, and vacant lots to the south. This property does not abut current right-of-way currently and is serviced through an access easement on Northeast Tracy Lane at the northwest corner of this lot, as well as a public access easement which extends from its southern boundary to East Theater Lane on the east property line. Horizon Project is proposing to purchase this property as well as tax lot 2300, which provides the 50-foot access easement. Using the land under this purchase agreement, the applicant will have sufficient access to East Theater Lane to access and develop the property. The property is served by water and sewer on the east and north property lines. Water and sewer were extended basically in an L shape around this property at the time Big Five went in. They ran all utilities up from Theater Lane. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on the proposed annexation on February 9th, and following closure of the public hearing, the Planning Commission made a recommendation to the City Council to annex the property with the C2 zoning designation. I should point out that the Planning Commission did adopt one finding of fact that is a little unusual. And if you look in your findings, number 15, they mentioned that they felt that Northeast Tracy Lane, which is the basically driveway that runs between PetSense and Big Five, is not really adequate to provide full development opportunities for any potential multifamily, and that the access that crosses highway or tax lot 2300 should be considered the primary point of access.
They're suggesting the East Theater Lane street would be the primary. Yeah.
Yes.
I could probably agree with that. Okay. We will now accept public testimony. All persons speaking must state their name and mailing address and limit testimony to 5 minutes. We're going to start out with the proponents who would like to speak. Anyone? Is there somebody on Zoom that would like to speak? Okay.
Yes, hi.
Welcome.
We
can see you and hear you.
Okay. My name is Tracy, and I'm the CEO of Horizon Project, and we are the applicant, and we plan to use this particular property to develop a small integrated housing complex, which would serve affordable housing for working families, as well as integrating some supported living units for individuals who are experiencing intellectual and developmental disabilities, and that is our primary
Are there other proponents? Okay. Are there any neutral parties who would like to speak? Any opponents who wish to speak? Okay. The hearing is now closed. City staff will now present its findings of fact. Clint, you're moving all over the place.
Yeah. You have 2 pages of findings that in your staff report that demonstrate compliance with 150.05 of our Code of Ordinances, as well as ORS Chapter 222, detailing state annexation requirements, as well as the Planning Commission's finding of requiring East Theater Lane access.
And there was no feedback on the East Theater Lane access? They didn't have issue with it?
No.
Okay. So, this is time for council discussion. I'm super excited about the opportunity to have this anticipated multifamily residential project, especially, you know, where it's going to have potentially, you know, access for affordable housing for individuals, developmental or intellectual disabilities. So having access to that in our community is important, and I don't know that we have enough of that. And so super excited that they're proposing this project. The only question I had, I guess, and maybe Ms. Solis can answer this, has the Horizon project done these in other locations before?
Yes, actually we have. Our first integrated affordable housing project was in Florida. It's still around. It's called Pioneer Commons, 20 units of affordable housing integrated with a group home. And it's been, in fact, I'm sad to say I'm old enough to have been the original developer and now have refinanced it 20 years later. So that's frightening. But it has been a successful model. We are now in pre-development for a 70-unit complex of integrated housing for affordable housing in Pendleton. The city was gracious and donated that land to Horizon Project, and we have gone to Oregon Housing and got housing tax credits, and now are doing the same model with, again, an integrated group home within a larger affordable housing and a prioritization for supported living for individuals with DD, experiencing IBD. So this is going to be our next attempt to move forward in Hermiston with this model. So it's a model that's become best practice in the industry around the country, but I believe Oregon is on kind of the cutting edge. So I'm happy to answer any more questions.
Perfect. Counselors, do you guys have any questions? Yes, Ms. Myers.
What would be the number of units that you would be putting in?
I believe the Planning Commission was concerned that we had like 26 units plus some group homes, and we can certainly scale that back. We want to make sure it integrates well within the community. So I think, now we defer to Mr. Spencer on this, I believe we're now looking at 24 units plus 1 group home instead of 26 units plus 2 group homes. It's certainly all still in the preliminary design stage, but we can make all of that work.
And my other question is to the impact on East Theater Lane.
Is that question for Mr.
Traffic
Spencer?
impact.
Okay. Is that for Mr. Spencer or is that for Ms. Silvas?
Whoever.
Mr. Spencer, do you got a comment to that?
East Theater Lane is designated as a major collector on our TSP. It's got sufficient right-of-way for eventually developing it out 3 lanes all the way from 10th to Highway 395. As development occurs, we are going to be requiring improvement to that. Their particular frontage in this case is only 50 feet, and so there's not a lot of improvement that's going to go on associated with this. The city is actually right now looking at potentially doing some kind of a buy-in where rather than physically improving Theater Lane, taking individual payments, we've got another development we're looking at in the same place where, because the lots on Theater Lane are so small, no one person can build it. It might make more sense just to pay into the city and have the city go in and do it at a later date, is what our plan is right now for theater.
Okay.
Other questions? Mr. Brown?
Not really a question, more of a comment about this project. I just really want to thank you, Terry, for your presentation. I actually had the luxury of going to Horizon Project already. Part of it is because I'm a special education teacher in my master's program, and so they're one of the only facilities in the area that service students with disabilities and intellectual needs. And so one of the conversations I actually had the pleasure of speaking with Ms. Shannon Kelly, one of your site supervisors, was that this has been a need for a while. I think they've been at capacity and have been needing this for quite a long time. There's definitely a need in our community, and this is something that will address that need. My question will be actually if this is enough, or do you see that there are going to be future projects along the line? And this would be more to Terry.
Sure. You know, I keep and all of us do actually keep a close eye on demand for our services and supported living. And Hermiston is, I would say, speaking in the vernacular of the business world and the social service world, our biggest demand for supported independent living services and housing is in Hermiston. It's our growth area, so to speak. So I would hope so. I come from a background of oddly social service and finance and banking, so it's an integration of all of those. So I come at it kind of heart mission forward, but very prudent in how we analyze opportunities and where we should expand in our mission. And I certainly see Hermiston offering those opportunities, and we will do our best to meet the demand of our clients and the families of the people we support as long as it presents itself. Did that answer your question?
It did, thank you. I know that, all our citizens need a place to stay and to build up the workforce, and I think this is something that meets all of those needs, especially for people with intellectual disabilities. I know it's really tough, especially once you leave high school, to try to get out in the real world and try to succeed, try to, to put a roof over your head, be able to do everything that you have to do to be successful. So I really appreciate everything that you and the Horizon Project have done for our city.
Thank you. That means great.
Other comments or questions? So can I get a motion to approve the findings of fact?
Second.
Been moved by Councilor Myers, seconded by Councilor Spicer-Coon. Roll call.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Motion to improve conditions of approval, and I guess this is referring to the access off of East Theater? Yeah. Can I get a motion to approve the imposed conditions of approval?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Councilor Davis, seconded by Councilor Harden, that we impose the conditions of approval. Roll call.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously, 7-0. So now we're on to the ordinance, which refers to the annexation of the 1.02 acres of property at 80 Northeast Tracy Lane. Ordinance number 2337. Mr. Smith?
Yes, we would just be open to any further questions or anything related to this annexation. I think we've had great staff explanation.
Yeah. Any further questions from the council at this point? Okay, I'm going to request the first reading of the ordinance be read by title only and calls for a roll call.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Tubby?
First reading by title only, ordinance number 2337, an ordinance annexing certain real property approximately 180 feet east of North 1st Street, describing said real property, withdrawing said real property from special districts, and designating zoning.
Thank you. Mayor requests that the ordinance be put on for final adoption at this meeting and that the second reading be by title only and calls for a roll call. Roll call.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously, 7-0. Mr. Tubby?
Second reading by title only, ordinance number 2337, An ordinance annexing certain real property approximately 180 feet east of North First Street, describing said real property, withdrawing said real property from special districts, and designating zoning.
Thank you. Any public comment on ordinance number 2337? Nobody? Okay. Can I get a motion that ordinance number 2337 be adopted and become effective 30 days after adoption by the City Council?
So moved. Second.
It's been moved by everybody, seconded by everybody. I'm going to give it to Spicer Kuhn and Barone on the second. Okay, roll call.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Congratulations, Mr. Silvis. Welcome to the community, and we appreciate what you're doing. Thank you.
May I say thank you for such incredible support. Historically, that's not always happened, so I appreciate it.
Well,
To have been support, thank you.
we hope to see this one be successful and keep looking at more for us. We'd appreciate it.
Will do.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now we're on to Resolution 2209, Economic Development Incentive Program. Mr. Smith.
Yes, I'll ask Mr. Morgan to walk us through this.
All right. Mr. Morgan.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this resolution before you this evening is what we're referring to as a bulk power incentive program. Let's see. There we go. So what is Resolution 2209? At its core, it is an economic development incentive program. What it does is it will rebate electricity franchise fees and payments in lieu of taxes to extremely large power users who purchase beyond a certain threshold of power within the city in any given year. So what are franchise fees? It's important to kind of remember what we're talking about at the core level. So franchise fees really are fees that we charge for the use of the publicly owned right-of-way on utilities like electricity, gas, telecom utilities, all of those that ultimately provide valuable services to the residents and businesses in the community, but at the same time, they are using publicly owned real estate and right-of-way, which then when we go to maintain and operate our street system, we do have to work around, and so there is a fee necessary in order to accommodate that. So this is just a good example of use of our public right-of-way that's over on Northeast 10th Street. You can see on the west side of the street, you have Pacific Core has some 115, I believe, kV power lines, and on this side, it's Umatilla Electric has some power lines. So when we go in, you know, they're in the right-of-way. We do have to take those things into account when we're operating and developing and maintaining our rights-of-way. So our current franchise fees and payments in lieu of taxes, or PILT, on our electricity utilities is 7% of their gross revenues. So the way that that works is if a customer's electricity bill is $100 for the month, they pay their utility, and then the utility collects that, and quarterly they would send $7 out of that $100 to the city for their compensation for the use of the right-of-way. So again, what is Resolution 2209? Again, it's really a relatively simple concept. What it boils down to is it's a bulk discount. You know, if you go to the carpet store and you buy 10,000 square feet of carpet, they're going to give you a discount versus if you bought 10 square feet of carpet. That's really what this is all about. So Resolution 2209, in this instance, the electricity customer would pay their electric bill exactly the same as every other customer in the city. They would pay that normally. The utility would receive that payment and then still remit 7% of their franchise fees and PILT to the city, again, as normal. The city would receive that franchise fee and PILT into the general fund as normal. On the back end of this, that's where the rebate would come into play. So if you had an extremely large power customer who could come in to the city at the end of a calendar year and prove to us that they had purchased enough power to pay at least $750,000 in franchise fees and PILT for the previous calendar year, then the city would, upon verification of that, rebate an amount equal to everything that they paid in franchise fees and PILT over and above $750,000 for the previous year. So if they paid $750,001 in franchise fees and PILT, we would rebate back to them $1. So also important to keep in mind, this is a temporary policy. Could go longer, but at this point it is scheduled to sunset at the end of calendar year 2029. Also, it's important to keep in mind that it is scalable. The dollar thresholds that are included in the resolution are set to index annually with inflation. Also important to keep in mind the scale and the potential impacts or unintended impacts. So it's important to keep in mind that we're talking about a threshold of $750,000 for one customer. Currently, there's no customer within the city that pays more than $70,000 per year on an individual basis. Also important to keep in mind that citywide, all power franchise fees and PILTs for fiscal year 21 across all roughly 5,500 electricity accounts across the city only paid about $950,000 across all of them. So if we had somebody come in that purchased this scale of power, it could potentially increase the franchise fees and PILT revenue alone with just that one customer by about 79%. So who would qualify? Who's going to purchase that much power? The cutoff really, in order to hit $750,000 in franchise fees and PILT, is roughly $10.7 million per year in power purchases through the utility. Again, for some scale, all Hermiston Energy Services customers in fiscal year 21 paid to HES a total of $9.4 million in power purchases for the year. So what's the value of something like this to the potential customer? What's it going to end up costing the city and opportunity cost associated with rebating back dollars over and above that? So in the example of a customer who comes in and still purchases an incredibly large amount of power at $10 million in 1 year, they would again pay their 7% franchise fees and PILT at $700,000. Once that works its way through the system, through the utility, then to the city, the amount reimbursed would be zero because they hadn't hit that $750,000 threshold. If a customer comes in and they've actually purchased $15 million, then again they will have paid 7% franchise fee and PILT, comes out to $1,050,000. They come in, prove what they've paid, and then they would be reimbursed an amount equal to $300,000. So $750,000 subtracted from $1.05 million. And so interestingly, that $750,000 figure divided by $15 million in power purchases comes out to an effective rate. If you were thinking about it in terms of what their franchise fee and PILT percentage was, it would work out to about 5%. Now, why do I say that 5% is an interesting number? A number of the councilors will remember back in 2017, City Council raised our franchise fee and PILT fees from 5% to 7%. And in doing so, the purpose for doing that was then to raise revenue for maintaining the streets. Again, the franchise fees are intended for compensating the public for allowing utilities to utilize the right-of-way. So they increased the franchise fee and PILT by that margin of 5% to 7% and dedicated that marginal increase to fund street maintenance. At the time, there was some concern voiced by a number of the councilors about, what does raising the cost of electricity basically have on prospects for future economic development. And at the time, I basically indicated that it's relatively straightforward process, what we're doing this evening, to come up with something like a bulk discount policy like Resolution 2209, which can basically come in on the back end and mitigate that impact on those really large power customers who are really making their decisions about where they locate based on their power. So why is this important? Who are those folks that are making those decisions of where to locate based on their power? So the gross power costs are a major siting decision for some large-scale industrial users, and a lot of them are attracted here to the region because really regionally in the Northwest we have relatively affordable power compared to a lot of the areas of the country. But even then more locally, Umatilla Electric Co-op has on average in the ballpark of around 30% lower cost industrial power than an investor-owned utility like PP&L. So that's really why they're looking to be located in UEC service territory. So that's really the margin that we're looking at, is that 30% margin on their electricity bill, if that's their highest input cost that they're looking at. If we levy a 7% franchise fee on power sold inside of the city, Now you've reduced that margin from 30% down to 23%, which is still significant, but now it does start to shrink the margin if there's some competition between a property that's inside of the city and one that's outside of the city. If the land may cost more inside of the city, there may be some other utility access issues, and some of those things do start to come into play as you start chipping away at that margin. So this is kind of a difficult map to read if you don't look at it every day like I do. So what we're looking at here is there's the Walmart distribution center. Here's US 395 going that direction. This line right there is Feedville Road. This area right here generally is what we refer to as our Cook Industrial site. Important to keep in mind that counties in Oregon are precluded from charging franchise fees. So the franchise fee out in Umatilla County, unincorporated county, is 0, whereas inside of the city it's 7%. So the shading here represents the blue. That is PP&L electricity service territory. The green is Hermiston Energy Services territory. And the orange is Umatilla Electric service territory. So if you're thinking about a potential large-scale industrial development going in this area, if you locate north of Feedville Road, you'll be paying about $1 million in franchise fees at 7%. If you locate south of Feedville Road, you'll be paying $0 on franchise fees. Granted, you'll be in PP&L service territory, but now you're paying that. This area over here is also in the city limits of Hermiston, again, north of Feedville Road. This area south of Feedville Road is outside of city limits, but inside of UEC service territory. So now you're starting to see where some of those things do start to come into play in siting decisions for some of these really large-scale power users. And again, what we're talking about is this is really a compensation for the use of our right-of-way. And what we find is that the linear foot usage or impacts on a right-of-way don't necessarily scale when you get into these really, really large power consumers. So what we're looking at, mainly the type of company that's going to be using that much power is really going to be congregated down in our South Industrial Park area. So it's really down in this area. And the most logical way to bring that scale of power into that facility is going to be somewhere along Feedville Road. And so really, in terms of city of Hermiston right-of-way, the only area that you would really even see any of these facilities go in is on that roughly 1,500 linear feet of Kelly Boulevard. Meanwhile, they could be paying upwards of $1 million in franchise fees. Significantly higher franchise fee per foot of street right-of-way than something like a residential subdivision. Also important to keep in mind, we've been highly keyed in on this topic since at least 2013. We've been in conversations with the city of Umatilla throughout that process. They had been implementing some bulk power purchase incentive policies on their franchise fees. Since that time, in 2020, they raised their cap to $1.5 million on their franchise fees that they will collect citywide. Important to keep in mind, they already have 2 extremely large power consumers within the city. There's a third coming online soon, and that also takes into account the fact that they have other existing customers inside of the city aside from just those 3. So when that third facility comes online in the city of Umatilla, each of those facilities is going to be paying less than $500,000 each per year in franchise fees and PILT. One of the things that we worked on them specifically is in looking at how they're charging those franchise fees right now, is that their policy sunsets at the end of 2029. And so we felt that setting up this policy the way that we have with ours to also sunset at the end of 2029 should help us to maintain some regional bargaining power when we get to the end of 2029. By having ours sunset at the same time as theirs, hopefully it gets us to some regional parity, and then we don't see some competition between the 2 communities. So again, in summary, what this resolution really does is it's a rebate for everything on franchise fees and PILT that's paid over $750,000. The example on a $15 million power purchase is that they would go back down to an effective rate of 5%. It caps any 1 year for any one company if they do 2 developments at $1.5 million in franchise fees and PILT. And both of those numbers at $750,000 and $1.5 million both index with inflation through 2029. So the financial impact, important to keep in mind, there's absolutely no financial impact until any development meets that threshold. But then also the fiscal year 2021 franchise fee and PILT for the entire city for all electricity users was $950,000. If a new eligible customer comes in at this rate as proposed, they stand to raise our franchise fee revenue by about $750,000 or about 79% for just that one customer. So with that, I'd stand for any questions.
So Mark, you suggested or said that Umatilla already has 3 of these, and they're less than $500,000 per very large customer. So is that 3 of them combined together is less than 500,000?
Yeah, so the way that they have theirs set up is theirs is a cap citywide. They basically stop collecting electricity franchise fees citywide once they hit $1.5 million in franchise fee and PILT collected citywide. And so with this third one, that means that each of them combined, it's impossible for them to pay more than $500,000 each, because you also have to include all of the other customers within the city.
Gotcha. I misunderstood that. I thought you were suggesting that all of those 3 customers combined don't buy enough to go over the 750 threshold.
No, they do. And so that's where, you know, again, I'm glad that we're able to merge this sunset timeline with the city of Umatillas, because, you know, we've been encouraged to set our own cap at $1.5 million. But meanwhile, you know, we already bring in almost $1 million in franchise fees, you know, as is. And so I think doing our own thing the way that I think best serves our residents, does what we need for us in the meantime, gets us, you know, about 6 or 7 years until 2029, and then we can all come back together and come up with a more regional approach to how we're going to handle this.
So would the one customer that's suggesting to build on that property get above the $750,000 threshold in 1 year?
In 1 year, yeah.
Okay. And if they built multiple facilities, that's where the 1.5 cap would come into play?
Yeah, if they built on 2 separate tax lots is when that 1.5 would come into play.
If it's all on one same tax lot?
If it's all on one same tax lot, it's $750,000 is the cap. If they built on an additional tax lot, then it would be 1.5.
How many facilities could you put on that one tax lot that's then purchased?
4. So
that
that's
clarify that 4 though, Mark, because that's one facility really.
Yeah, so 4 buildings is one facility.
Okay.
Yeah, so that $750,000 that applies to one campus basically,
Gotcha.
and so
that makes sense.
So if they were to build a second campus, that's where the 1.5 comes into play.
Okay. And it's CPI adjusted, so next year it's going to go up.
Yeah.
Okay. So it won't always stay at that 750 mark.
Yeah, and important to keep in mind, you know, this is, you know, it's presented as a resolution. It's city policy. We didn't get too deep down into the weeds on selecting, you know, are we talking, you know, BLS CPI for urban wage earners? Are we talking producer price index? You know, that you can pick, you know, there's lots of different types of inflationary rates out there. But I think we didn't need to get too down deep into the weeds on that, and we'll get there when we come to it.
Okay. Other questions? Yep.
I just was curious how we're going to account and hold that money. Obviously, we're going to know when the customer crosses that rate. They're still going to pay us the money. Are we going to put it into an account or interest on it before we give it back to them, or what are we going to do with it?
Yeah, so that's where, and that's one of the reasons, you know, kind of one of the upsides of setting it up this way is that, again, they're going to be paying their electricity bill the same as every other customer in the city. So they're going to be paying it, which includes the 7% franchise fee and PILT, goes to the utility. The utility is going to treat it the exact same, comes to the city, and then at that point it is the city's general fund dollars that we can do with however we want. We're going to be setting this policy that directs ourselves on how we're going to rebate that back. But I think it helps to kind of separate those dollars from the utility and the customer at that point. And so at that point, it's really more of an economic development policy call on the city's side of things. So we will have to make sure that we're keeping track of that and knowing that, okay, I mean, it will be difficult to lose track of that level of dollars that are coming in, but it is something that we're going to have to make sure that we keep track of and account for. And so the utility currently remits their revenue to us on a quarterly basis, and so I'm not sure how much interest we can earn, you know, if we get some, you know, for 3/4 of a year, but I know that our Director of Finance, Mr. Krosik, is all about trying to maximize our resources that we have when we have them. So that's one of the hopes that we can hold on to it for up to a year before we then rebate it back when the customer comes to prove what they've paid to us.
That was another question I was going to ask too. When we're talking about this significant of a contribution, you had suggested that it gets remitted to us quarterly. There's not a way to do that monthly?
There is. I mean, well, I'd have to go back and look. It's probably spelled out in our ordinance. So with Untitled Electric Co-op, we don't actually have a franchise agreement with them. We have an ordinance with them. So it may be spelled out that it specifies that it comes to us quarterly. Nothing that says that we couldn't
we'd have to
change that, but
I like that idea.
Yeah.
Other questions? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Morgan. So how about public comment? Any public comment on Resolution 2209? Seeing none, can I get a motion to adopt Resolution 2209 and lay it upon the record?
Second.
Been moved by Councilor Davis, seconded by Councilor Harden, that we approve or adopt Resolution 2209 and lay it upon the record. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Still here, Maria?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right, thank you. Motion passes unanimously, 7-0. Resolution 2210, Enterprise Zone Expansion. Who's doing that one, Mr. Smith?
Mr. Morgan
Mr.
will.
Morgan?
Yep.
Okay.
you thought you were done with me, but here I am still. I promise this one should go a little bit quicker. All right, so Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this resolution before you this evening is about expanding the Greater Hermiston Enterprise Zone. So what is Resolution 2210? Again, this is also an economic development incentive resolution. Specifically what this does is it expands the area where our Greater Hermiston Enterprise Zone exemptions can be requested. It's important to keep in mind that this action this evening does not actually approve any exemptions. There's no request for an exemption on the table. All this is doing is basically setting new boundary areas where a property or a development that locates within that area could in the future come forward and request an exemption. And again, depending on the size of that, it may come to the council for future approval. So what is an enterprise zone benefit? It takes many forms. The enterprise zone program is a state authorized program that, there's a lot of different components to it that have different triggers and thresholds depending on size of the investment, number of jobs created, incomes associated with those jobs. But it's important to keep in mind at its base level, what an enterprise zone benefit is it's a property tax exemption specifically targeted at stimulating job creation and private investment within an enterprise zone. So the Greater Hermiston Enterprise Zone has been in existence since the mid-1960s, mid-1980s, but since 2009, there's been about $380 million in new and planned private investment within the zone, and since that time, we've seen just under $90 million actually rolled back onto the tax rolls as exemptions have expired. That roughly $90 million is now generating roughly $1.5 million per year in new annual tax revenue to the city, the county, the school district, the fire district, and all the other taxing jurisdictions that those investments are within. Also, since 2009, we've seen a little over 500 new permanent full-time jobs created within the enterprise zone, generating roughly $19 million in new private annual payroll. So we've done an expansion to the enterprise zone relatively recently in 2017. The green shaded area here roughly is equal to our existing city limits at the time in 2017. At that time, we proposed to expand this light red shaded area out by the freeway interchange. This is I-84, that's I-82, this is the Army Depot. At the time, we were working with Lamb Weston on a large expansion on their facility located here. We felt that it made sense not to simply expand the zone on one single tax lot, and so we took the opportunity so that we could just kind of lay the groundwork in case any other future large investments were interested, and took in all of the property out by the freeway interchange that was already fully zoned industrial. At the time, we didn't choose to take in some of the land that may be planned for industrial but not currently zoned for industrial. So in reviewing kind of what our plan is for existing and future enterprise zone development into the future, This is Umatilla County's zoning map for the west end of the county. Again, this is the area that we brought in 2017, I-84, I-82, the Army Depot. This is the main line for the railroad. And this is Feedville Road, these light shaded areas with diamonds in them. Those are areas that are currently zoned agricultural but carry a future industrial planning designation. And the areas shaded in gray are already fully zoned for industrial. So those areas ultimately in the future have already made it through quite a number of hoops for becoming industrial land in the future. So the proposal before you this evening as part of this resolution is to basically close the gap between the existing main part of the enterprise zone and the portion out by the freeway interchange by bringing in all of this light green shaded area. The southern boundary there is basically the railroad main line. The northern part is Feedville Road. The eastern part is South First Place, and the western boundary is the river to make that completed area. So it's important, you know, that this expansion here, I think it's consistent with the zoning. You know, it sets things up. That's really a lot of the remaining developable currently industrial or planned industrial land out in that area. Also, I think one of the benefits of laying this out as we're showing it is you can see the eastern boundary there being South First Place, but we remember that the future industrial actually goes further east than South First Place. Is I think that, you know, this takes into account the fact that this boundary right there is the boundary between Hermiston School District and Stanfield School District for taxing purposes, and so I think it really provides some clarity in the city of Hermiston controlled enterprise zone, not directly or automatically making decisions on these types of investments between Hermiston School District and Stanfield School District. That's not to say that couldn't be a potential option in the future, but at this point it's just easier for that clarity to stop it there on the eastern side of the property. Also, from a developability standpoint, this area is much more readily developable. This area is still all owned by Union Pacific Railroad out of Omaha and has been for a century, I don't know, quite a long time. They've shown very little interest in seeing that property developed, and it's also located in PP&L service territory. Meanwhile, this area through here, Feedville Road, carries two of our main trunk lines for the regional water system. And also there's planned and existing large-scale power generally located on the Feedville Road corridor in that area. Also important, you know, maybe one of the questions as to why we're doing this expansion. Just in the last, 3 or 4 years, we've seen nearly 300 acres of industrial land, prime industrial land, sell or and be prepared for development or already developed. We've seen an Amazon data center locate there. Amazon has purchased these 100 acres here with plans to develop, and the Meyer Distributing Warehouse has gone in on those 40 acres there. So, we need to keep making sure that we have appropriate stock available within the enterprise zone. Also, this is an homage to our former city councilor, George Anderson. He was always full of good words of wisdom. And so the question I think always comes up, or would otherwise come up, of, okay, well, what about the Army Depot? Everybody wants to know about the Army Depot. It's going to transfer, any day now. Well, I remember going to a CDA meeting 9.5 years ago where it was going to be transferring any day now. And I think even if that property were to transfer tomorrow, it's still in a state from a utility delivery standpoint that it's still going to be a number of years before any legitimate development interest could go in out there. Again, even if it transferred tomorrow. And so I'm not saying that we're stopping right here and we'll never jump onto the depot property with an enterprise zone, but I think we're going to wrestle one alligator at a time, and we're going to wrestle the closest alligator. And so that's an alligator that we can wrestle down the road. So from a process standpoint, we sent out notices to all of the underlying taxing jurisdictions on January 27th, inviting them to the meeting this evening, as well as to the Umatilla County Commissioners meeting on Wednesday, who also has to approve this zone expansion. And then on the March Port of Umatilla meeting, they will also have to consent to the expansion. So with that, stand for any questions.
I guess the first question I had to do with access to that property. I know Feedville, south of the housing development, but if you're talking about west of, what was that, 207? That section that goes all the way out to the river, there's no bridge across the river from the west side to the east side of that property, right?
Not a vehicle bridge. We do have, the regional water system does have a pipe attached to a railroad trestle that crosses the bridge there, but the access would really be coming from Feedville Road. So you'd be coming in off of 207 and accessing it off of Feedville.
And so if somebody was going to develop out there, they'd have to put a lot of infrastructure in, and as far as like road, is there?
Yeah, I think it's a gravel road out there currently.
And is there electricity or any power lines that go out that way?
I haven't looked too far off in that direction, but we do know that there's significant regional water system infrastructure out there. So it's rare, I think, and becoming rarer that you're going to find all of the requisite utilities all right next door to one parcel.
Yeah. The Shears property is already in, right? So we're not annexing that in.
Yeah, so the Shears property is this teeny tiny little, that's
there,
back in 2009, we did do just an individual tax lot expansion to take in the Shears
North
property.
that would be added in now. Okay. Perfect. Other questions, councilors? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Okay, so is there any public comment on Resolution 2210, Enterprise Zone Expansion? Okay, can I get a motion to adopt Resolution 2210 and lay it upon the record?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Councilor Davis, seconded by Councilor Duran, that we adopt Resolution 2210 and lay it upon the record. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Motion passes unanimously. January 2022 financial report. Mr. Smith?
Yes, I'll stall for a second while the clicker gets passed, but Mr. K will handle this report.
All right. Welcome, Mr. K.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, thank you for having me before you tonight to talk about what happened in January of this year. I apologize, it's fully 1 month later, but it didn't fit the calendar for the first meeting. So I apologize for that. I will try to do better going forward. And I'm going to do a very abbreviated report simply because of the magnitude of the considerations and votes you've taken tonight. The Hermiston Urban Renewal Agency is right now at 98% of what we projected property tax revenue to be for the year through 7 months. The last 2 years we have exceeded the projected revenue. I take that to mean two things. One, it gives verification to us that we're very conservative in our revenue estimates to make sure we can meet our payments on all our obligations. But two, I think it's an indication people are growing in the Urban Renewal Agency district, and that's a good thing for the city. So we're looking pretty good there.
Mr. K.
When we look at the
Mr. K, sorry to interrupt there. Your revenue resource, the cash forward position, we have that cash, right?
Yes, we have that cash.
Why isn't that actualized under actual revenue year to date and throws your number off at 58%?
Because the property tax and other is the actual revenue that comes into the district.
Got it.
The cash forward is what's carried over from prior year.
Right. I got that.
And it doesn't show as a revenue source.
So we'll never meet 100% of the total revenue. Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, when we look at our revenue sources, we're going to meet our revenue, but our cash position is totally different than revenue.
Okay.
I hope that makes sense. It's like if you saved $167,000 from one period and you're going to make another $238,000, your revenue is actually $238,000. That's why we have that distinction. And that
correct. This is it's an accounting discussion.
Okay.
Good question. And I didn't do a very good job explaining it. I apologize. In the general fund, we have revenues and transfers, and we were below our projection by about 390,000. The fund is statistically, and this is purely by chance, statistically we are right where we said we would be on a projected basis at the end of January. We're within 0.2% of where we said we would be at this point in time after 7 months. And you'll notice there's only 2 months there that we were actually over our projections, in August and November. And part of this has to do with the ongoing effects of our historical revenue streams that affects our projections. But I'm tickled pink that we're right where we were supposed to be at this time on a projected basis. On the expenditure side, again, is a tribute to our philosophy of be conservative on our revenue and possibly even a little less conservative on the expense side. We are actually 11.8% below where we thought we would be this year for a lot of reasons, because we're coming out of the Omicron and Delta variant. We haven't had to spend as much money on some of the programs within the general fund that we had historically spent. And we show that here, that we're right now showing a 17% year-to-date reduction in our expenses for the year, because a lot of things haven't been done in the first 7 months due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So we're saving money here, and we're right where we think we ought to be on the revenue side. And then when we look at the general fund in total through January, we are roughly 3 times our minimum reserve requirement of 2.1 million. I expect that that will hold through to the end of the year, as far as we will be well above our minimum reserve requirement by the end of June. I'm very positive in our outlook that that's going to get better over time. But right now, that's where we're projected to be, at about 2.5 million at the end of the year. I have not included our capital projects in today's summary. There hasn't been much movement except on City Hall, where we make a monthly payment to Griffin Construction as part of their contract for the construction. But there hasn't been a lot of movement on the other funds in that regard. The capital, the utility and street funds report, all of the funds right now are sitting in a very good position. HES has a little more expenditures on a monthly average basis than what we normally would see, but you can see it's offset by more than the growth in revenue, partially due to the increased rates. And the Regional Water Fund is a little behind on their revenue, but again, they're very positive on their expenditures as being below where we would have projected on a monthly average basis through the year. And with that, I'd be glad to stand for any questions.
Council, any questions? All right. Thank you, Mr. Kay.
Thank you, sir.
Any public comment about the January 2022 financial report? Okay. Seeing none, can I get a motion to accept the January financial report as presented?
Move.
Second.
Then moved by Councilor Myers, seconded by Councilor Barone, that we accept the January financial report as presented. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Motion passes unanimously, 7-0. Committee reports. Any committee reports? None? Yes, Mr. Barone.
We had a Hispanic Advisory Committee meeting on Tuesday after President's Day. We had a few presenters. We had a few apprenticeship programs and job opportunities that were presented. I think it was a really great presentation. I also think that that's a need that's needed in this area, job training and getting those apprenticeship programs. So it was really good exposure. We also had a CCS representative there, as well as Commissioner Dan Doherty, I'm sorry. Commissioner Dan Doran was also there as well, and they spoke to us about CCS and really the amount of work that they've had to do for our community in the last few days. If I'm sure everybody was watching the news of the pileup that happened on I-84, they responded for that. And then the explosion that happened at Shears, the very next day, they responded to that as well. And so the commissioner really had a tip of the cap for CCS and how they've been able to manage what's been extremely, extremely stressful for the community. We also had Latino service opportunities presented by Rotary Club. We had the president, Glenn, that was there, also presenting to Hispanic Advisory Committee, trying to see if there could be any interest or participation, also soliciting ideas to try to up engagement so we can have, so that Rotary can also be more of a club that has more inclusion. I know they've tried to be as inclusive as possible, and I really appreciate them coming to the committee, seeking more ideas and input to try to get more diverse participation.
Perfect. Anybody else?
Mayor.
Yes.
I attended the last Stepping Stones meeting.
Okay.
And that was February 16th. They're still making plans and working forward as to how they're going to, and what they're going to do for the homeless shelter. Oh.
Yeah.
Can you not hear me?
There you go.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. So I attended the Stepping Stones meeting on February 16th. They're still working forward and making plans for the homeless shelter. They don't have it quite all figured out yet, but they're working on figuring out what their policies are going to be and what this is going to look like and what kind of housing they're going to have available there. The warming shelter, which they're somewhat involved in, is closing at the beginning of March, so that'll go away, and the homeless the warming shelter will not be available anymore. Their next meeting is this Wednesday, March 2nd, at 6 o'clock, and they do meet up in the Sears building if anybody's interested in attending that. They are looking for some additional board members to get a little bit more diversity into their board, so that they're looking at different populations within Hermiston and the Umatilla area. And so that's what happened at the Stepping Stones meeting.
Perfect. Any other committee reports? Yes, Mr. Ron?
I have a question for the counselor.
Yeah.
Is the warming station just closing for the season, I'm assuming?
Yeah, it's just closing for the season.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else from committee reports? Okay, we're going to move on to the mayor's report. I guess I want to just talk about the Ukrainian-Russia incident really quick, and send our well wishes out to our families and community members that may be impacted by what's going on in the conflict over there, and hoping for a short resolution for them and that their families aren't affected by that conflict. It's kind of a devastating situation, so wish well for our Ukrainian and our Russian friends that are in our communities. This Wednesday is the DCA banquet, so hopefully you guys have been notified and can attend. That's here, right, Ms. Smith? I think you guys would enjoy some of the recipients of those awards, so I would encourage you to attend. Mass policy, I guess, came out, OHA came out again today with a new updated notice, I think March 11th. Is that the updated notice? 11th at 11:59, yeah, p.m. And so March 12th, hopefully it'll continue to keep moving up. I just want to encourage the community members to continue to stick through it for the next couple weeks as we see the downslide of the Omicron variant and less hospitalizations and illnesses within our community. So good news is that date keeps moving forward. Legislative session is wrapping up this week. I know the Senate is looking to finish on Wednesday and the House on Friday. I just want to say thank you to our legislators out there working hard, almost 24 hours a day, trying to get this thing closed out and trying to work for some resolutions and some improvements for our state. So thank you to them and their hard work. We had an LLC board meeting on the 18th. First one in person in like 2 years, right, Mr. Smith?
You'd have one in the summer of 21 in person, but
Oh, that's
yes.
right. There was a short period when we were masked. Yeah. And so it was good to see everybody in person again and catch up for Councilor Browning's year. A lot of good things coming forward. I want to remind you again about the spring conference that's coming up. A lot of good conversations going on. And so if you have members across the state that you relate with as far as counselors, reach out to them and encourage them to come out and join us in our community. So we have some great evening events planned, one out at Echo Hills, wine tasting and dinner, and then rodeo up at Farm City on the following night. So so some great social events where you can connect with other counselors from other communities, but also some great education during the day. So looking forward to hosting our friends from across the state at that event. And then finally, I want to say a big shout out to our fire and police departments for the amount of work they had to put in last week during the Shears tragedy. You know, a lot of long hours and putting themselves on the line just try and save lives, which they did. Nobody, knock on wood, was killed in the process. There were some injuries. I think 7 people were transported to the hospital. I think they've all been released now, though, so that's excellent news. No fatalities. So thank you to the fire and the police and all our regional partners for collaborating with us and coming to our aid. It's the largest fire in, I've heard, 30 plus years, so it's pretty significant. And I want to, you know, multiple people across the state and federal legislatures as well have called and reached out and said, you know, whatever we can do to help, and they continue to reach out. And so been a lot of people that know the impact of Shears to our community and the lost jobs to those individuals. And so I want to thank the city administration for stepping up right away and, you know, trying to find some resolution for those families and working with the business to try and regroup and rebuild. You know, lost jobs creates a lot of anxiety and nervousness among people and families, and so anything we can do to help the Shears family and those people to transition into a new workforce. So continue to work for them and trying to find them some long-term solutions. So thank you to the administration too for that. How about other council reports? Yes, Mr. On.
Yes, I also want to thank Mr. Smith and Mr. Morgan for also stepping in and having those conversations with Shears and also with the apartment complex, you know, where the folks were going to get evicted or in the process of that. So thank you for keeping us informed, and I appreciate also your leadership in trying to work with the new owner of that apartment complex to find some possible solutions for those folks so that they're not evicted. I also want to give kudos to the police department. February 15th was School Resource Officers Appreciation Day, and we have such great rapport, you know, with the police department and the school resource officers, the work that they do at each of the levels in our elementary, middle, and high school. I think it's important, you know, to have a positive working relationship, because most of the time, sometimes some families may see, or children, you know, at a young age may see the police department in a negative limelight. So I really appreciate Officer Nava, Officer Vai, and the one at the high school, I can't think of his name at the moment, Officer Williams, and previous school resource officers for the work that they have done. We've seen them, you know, taking pictures to give attendance awards, or, you know, helping in a pedestrian area so that the kids are able to walk safely to school, or even monitoring around the high school to keep, you know, those that are going on Highland at a normal speed that they should be going. So please pass on our appreciation for the school resource officers.
Good. Other counselors? Yeah.
If I may, I just wanted to let everybody know that the Oregon East Symphony will be doing a concert here in Hermiston on March 13th at 2:30 at the Hermiston High School Auditorium. The tickets, the tickets are free, but there's limited availability, so they have a list of places around town where you can just drop in and pick up tickets if it's something that you want to do, and that's Bellinger's, Delish Bistro, Hermiston Chamber of Commerce, Hermiston Public Library, the Hermiston Senior Center, Kuhn Law Office, the Next Chapter Bookstore, and Oxford Suites. So if anybody's interested, they are a really great symphony, and I think it's something wonderful that we have here in Eastern Oregon. It's a professional symphony. They have players that come in from Portland and other major cities to participate in it. So the shows are always wonderful. So if you have an opportunity, get those tickets. Again, there's limited seating, but the tickets are free. You just have to stop by the locations and pick them up.
So that is the 13th?
The 13th, yes.
13th at Hermiston High School. You got a time?
2:30.
2:30. That must be like Saturday or something?
Sunday.
Sunday. Okay. Perfect. Oregon East Symphony for free. That's a luxury. They're not doing some sort of donation or anything as a fundraiser there.
I'm sure they will always accept money if you want to give it to them.
Well, that's excellent. So please plan to attend. Let's fill up that house. That's a nice venue to watch concert in. Other comments by counselors? Yes, Mr. Brown.
Oh, just real quick, I really wanted to acknowledge the Hermiston Youth Advisory candidates that are here, the committee members. I really look forward to you guys being in the city government and participating in the ways that you can. And it's a testament to you guys for being able to stick through the entire city council meeting. So honestly, kudos to you guys.
Yeah, very good, very good. All right, anything else, council? Ms. Smith.
Yes, just three items I wanted to mention. One is as you mentioned, the legislative session. At this point, I believe it's House Bill 2143 that has some funding for homeless pilot projects throughout the state, and that's something that the city and the 3 other cities on the west end, along with Umatilla County, are participating in. And so right now, it looks like that funding will move forward in the process. So we're happy to see that. Also, Friday, 12:15 is the South Hermiston Industrial Park ribbon cutting. So please come if you're available. And we've tried to invite all those who had a part in it. I think it'll be a nice celebration of a nice project. And then finally, I just wanted to let you know I had a great opportunity to meet staff, the regional staff member for Congressman Bentz. His name's Sage DeLong. He came over from LeGrand, and this is the first time we've really made a connection with his, with Congressman Bentz's office, and so it was good, and we were able to kind of start that relationship and be able to do the things that we have good connections with both of our U.S. senators, but now we have that. So just want to let you know, and that's all I have.
Perfect. We are adjourned.